into, a lot of sort of Irish folklore. We were taught a lot of that as a child, and I'll go into that story later on if we get the opportunity. But um, the the thing that really cracked me up, or what I wanted to do, was work with children who didn't necessarily have great test scores. In other words, at this point in time, I've done my bit. I've helped the American economy by selling all these Harleys and all these other things, and so I'm thinking, well, it's time to give back. And so I went to school and I got my master's degree in education. And then I insisted that I work on a reservation, which everybody told me I didn't want to do because, because of socioeconomic issues and things like that, sometimes the classes are very rowdy and maybe they wouldn't necessarily take to you because I was a non-native and things like that. And so, but I insisted on it. And so one of the things that we did was I taught that at the school, and learned some native language from around the Puget Sound area. And, we would do different things as far as numeracy and literacy types of different things. But a lot of that would involve different stories. And so the story of the basket ogress or the basket lady, stealing children, was something we taught in class. But it was interesting because of the fact that, in some ways, it was an allegorical story, not necessarily, a literal story. But it is interesting that if you and if you go to speak with different elders, a lot of times they have different interpretations of what Sasquatch is, and so it's led me to believe that in a lot of ways there's more than one big hairy thing out in the woods, because I have the same interaction with people that you do. It's either the most scariest or the most beautiful experience that these people have ever had. And how do you square that circle? You know what I mean, Carrie? Obviously, I'm not going to convince you that that what you saw was something other than a biological creature. And I've seen a Bigfoot in Colorado in the Rockies too that I would say is completely biological. That had no sort of magical powers. And then you've got the other camp in Bigfoot that says, oh, these things can shapeshift and come in and out of different dimensions and things like that. And I don't know, through your interactions with people, is that what you're coming up with too? It's like either one or the other.
Well, I hate to say it. I've had a couple guests on the show, on Bigfoot. I've had a lot of people, who claimed, I'm going to just use this one guy, and I know he's probably listening. I'm not going to mention his name, but he claimed he was a Bigfoot hunter. He had 30 years experience, right? So he would send me emails almost every day wanting to be on the show. And then finally I talked to him and I said, okay, well, you've had 30 years of experience. I said, where have you gone looking for a Bigfoot? Now, he was making all these claims that basically that, well, they're not going to hurt you unless you hurt them first. And he was all this stuff, right? And I said, okay, where have you looked? If you're a Bigfoot hunter, where have you looked? Well, it came out, he read books about it. And, going back, I guess 30 years ago. And then he started watching a couple movies, it came out about Bigfoot. And then the internet. He did a lot of research. Right. Well, that doesn't make him a hunter, No. And then I'll be honest with you, there's somebody on and I don't want to mention his name either. And we all have our own views, right, Kevin? So, but there's a guy, I got into it on Facebook. He goes out in the woods, right, looking for Bigfoot. So he's going Facebook Live, right, with his cell phone, showing him walking through the woods, and he'll say, oh, this was a camp where Bigfoot, because the leaves or the branches were, kind of like tied together, right? But the problem is you can clearly see the pathway he's walking, that people are walking on it all day long. Okay. Right. Well, I don't think you're going to find a Bigfoot on a area that everybody's going hiking on a daily basis, and probably 100 or 200 people a day walk the trail. I just don't think that's going to happen. You know,
Yeah.
I can only go by my experience, but I've talked to other people. Ed Romans, for example, if you went to Canada, and I said this before, he's like the number one folk singer in Canada. Now,
Right.
he's been on my show, and he ran into a Bigfoot. And he wanted to be on my show just to explain what he saw. His
Right.
same thing. He saw maybe 1,000 feet away. He saw the Bigfoot, and it saw him. And then it started running after him. He had him and his dog there. And the Bigfoot would run and drop down to 4, go back
Right.
to 2, go back to 4. He described everything that I saw, you know,
Right.
roughly what it looked like and all this stuff. But then at the last moment, he turned around. It was gone. So he lucked out. The thing only probably tried scaring him away. But, you know, I don't know. And then, you know, then I talk to these other people, like they'll say, well, I was out in the woods hiking with my family, and something started throwing rocks at us. And
Yeah.
it was a Bigfoot. Well, did you see it? No. So I don't know. You know, maybe there is different species, because, you know, if you go to the Himalayas, right, you got the Bigfoot, only it's white, and it's supposed to be really aggressive, where it tears people's heads off and eats their
Right.
flesh. Then you have, you know, just like anything. I mean, maybe it's a different, you know, species of them, but
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, is a lot of these people who have claimed to see Bigfoot. You know, I screen people before I even now bring them on the show. And if
Right.
their stories don't match, okay,
Yeah.
if I can't verify it, at least to a certain extent. I mean, you know, I'm not saying everybody on the show is telling the truth. That's up to the audience to, you know, make that decision. But
Right.
if somebody's so outrageous where they're saying stuff that doesn't even make logical sense, then no, I'm not going to bring them on the show. And that's not
Yeah,
going to
and
happen.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. It's a very interesting thing to me, because, you know, the first, well, there was a couple of times, I think there was the first time I think that I might have encountered a Bigfoot, but I didn't see it. You know, so you could mark that up as being, you know, 2 kids. I was 17 years old. I was with my best friend, and we used to do paintball adventures up in the Salton Basin up in Snohomish County, and but they instead of having us, you know, like take all the stuff back down, this guy would just actually say, "Okay, you guys just stay in this bus." We had this old high school bus that basically took all the seats out, and we'd just camp in it overnight, and something came out of the woods, and you know, this is in the middle of the Salton Basin, so there's no lights around for anywhere. And if somebody would have driven up, there would have been lights driving up there down the road. So I mean, you kind of take the logical approach and say, you know, so somebody would have had to drive up with you know, no lights on. You would have heard that. But then this thing comes out of the woods and starts walking around on two legs, and is very heavy, and you know, basically walked around the circumference of the bus and then went back into the woods. Now, could that have been a bear? Yeah, because bears do walk on 2 feet. But you know, and since we didn't see it, we didn't see it. So
Yeah, but don't forget, Kevin, bears usually walk on 2 feet when they are trying to show, basically, what's the right term? When they're trying to scare you, basically, they're trying to show you that they're macho. So they're going to get on their 2 feet, you know, to make themselves look bigger. Now, it's possible because, you know, it detected a bunch of people, you know, that the bear was on 2 feet. Then again, it could have been a Bigfoot. You don't know.
Right. So I always chalked that up to a little bit of youth, you know, and to be honest with you, there was adult beverages involved, and so, you know, anytime anybody says to me, I was up in the woods and I was drunk, well, you know, you can't listen to that story. You know, it's unfortunate, but you know, a lot of times people they have these camping stories, and they're imbibing, and you just can't trust that person that they're gonna. I mean, it's a great story, but then at the same time, you can't really say that's it. But the next time that I had an experiences was up in what's called Green Mountain. And it's the only place in Snohomish County that's kind of not. It's not on the Forest Service land. It's county land, and so you can shoot guns up there. It's kind of like the only place around here you can do that. And we used to. My wife had been abused or molested, not by her family. That sounds right. She was sexually assaulted by a person, and so she was. Trying to go up into the woods just to learn a little bit about self-protection and things like that. And so, I took her up there to go shooting because we didn't have to go to the range, and because we didn't find a range around here that she was that comfortable with. And so I just took her up into the woods, to go shooting. And, and it's very unfortunate because, a lot of these towns that are on the fringe of kind of society, like Granite Falls and stuff like that, people take stuff up into the woods by there and just dump it. They just take old couches, cars, everything, just throw it into the woods. It's just terrible looking.
Well, not just in your area. I mean, I used to live up by Enumclaw, and you go up towards the mountain up there, Mount Rainier. People would, do the same thing. They would get rid of, old whatever, and abandon it there because they didn't want to pay to go to the dump.
Yeah. And so, and my wife is a very, it's kind of anybody that's ever met her knows that she's a little bit, unique in the fact that she's very intuitive and things like that. I don't think she ever called herself a psychic, and it's not, from that standpoint, you could never say that because, with the psychic, you almost have the demand, the idea that this person can on demand say, answer my question and I'm going to get the answer, which is just not how she gets it. But sometimes, so we were up there and I used to watch Finding Bigfoot all the time because I was really interested in it, kind of really in the fact of I was really interested in how not to do things, and sort of I used to watch that show because it didn't ever make sense to me that you would knock on wood to get something to come towards you. I mean, I grew up in Ireland next to an estate, and they used to hire kids and stuff like that to beat cattle out of the away so that the lords and gentlemen could shoot at pheasant and all that stuff. You'd beat them out of the brush, that's what you do. So it wouldn't seem to me like humans are like that the same way. You pump 3 rounds into the air, you're not going to see me coming towards you. I'm going to be going the other way. So I figure, well, how can this? I mean, this has got to be some kind of a warning to say, hey, this is my space. Don't come any closer, And so, anyway, but we were up there, and I was making a joke about finding Bigfoot or something like that, and we started to shoot, and all of a sudden, I just had this really weird feeling, and most people have experienced this. And they'd say, well, this is not paranormal. That's just me having, being aware of the situation. But, like the hairs stand up on the back of your neck and that you're being watched, And so I got that feeling really, really kind of strangely, like I was being watched. And I took a look at the way that the hill was shaped. And I thought, well, if it was me, and I was going to watch somebody do something, I'd be on that hill up there looking down on you because that's the sort of position that you could get the most advantage for. So, if I tear up the hill after the guy or whatever it was, it can make its way over the crest and it's gone and that's it over with. Well, then I started to get that really weird smell like you smelled, that really weird urine smell.
Yeah, it
kind of
nauseating type smell.
Yeah, nauseating. And it was interesting because after the whole experience, because